Up next, a near fatal car accident, a seance with Jim Morrison, getting high off of banana peels. It's the original Alice Cooper group's rise to fame, told by the man who was there to see it all happen, the band's original roadie, Mike Ampboy Allen.
We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. And we've got a guest today that, boy, he's seen some stuff. He's got some stories to tell. Our guest is Mike Allen, author of Living and Touring with Alice Cooper and Other Stories. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Eric. It's a pleasure to be on here.
Just a few weeks back, I had your friend Dennis Dunaway on the show, and he's the one who suggests, he says, you got to get Mike Ampboy Allen. You got to get him on the show. He's got a great book, great stories. And
well, we're a mutual admiration society. When I wrote my book, I needed his advice almost constantly. I mean, we'd talk 10 times a day going, am I doing this right? Am I doing anything right? And he'd go, yeah, calm down. You have stories to tell, so stories them. And then I gave him pages to read, and he goes, this stuff is good. Keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he's the reason you ended up writing the book in the first place, right? You didn't think it was going to happen, but he's the one who encouraged you.
Yeah, it was a couple of incidents happened. One was his book, Snakes, Guillotines, and Electric Chairs, that I picked up in 2015. And he was very nice to autograph it for me. And I read it and I go, oh, this is great. I remember this stuff. And I go, oh, I remember it this way, or there's some more stuff I could add to it, and things like that. And it just got me thinking about the band, because when I left the band in 1970, working for them, I had to put them out of my mind because I was 23 years old, and all I could do was lift and carry things and drive great distances without going to the bathroom. And so I had to go to school. So I put the band, all the memories of the band, on hold. And his book just brought it all back. And then I was invited to Live from the AstroTurf, the premiere at the movie theater. And that was amazing. You could just see how they enjoyed playing again after so many years. And I talked to Dennis and I said, this is great. And he said, yeah, hopefully things will happen. And that was the other one. And the third time was a funeral that we had all the people after the funeral was over come to our house for a last visit before they took off. And during one of the conversations, somebody raised their hand and said, who here used to work for a band? And I wouldn't say much. I'd go, yeah, I did. It was okay. But because it was a funeral, people wanted to get their mind on other things. So I started telling them story after story after story about the band. And Danny, one of my wife's brothers, spoke up and said, I've known you for 40 years, and this is the first time I've ever heard this. And I'm going, nobody cares about my stories of a 40-year or a 50-year-old rock band. And he goes, yes, they do. They would love to hear these stories. And he said, you need to write a book. And so about a month after that, I said, all right, I'll write a book, thinking, well, I'll put down 10 things or something, and that'll appease them, and that'll be it. But I just kept writing and writing and writing and writing. And finally, I got a book out of it.
So when you're writing the book, it's starting to flow out of you, like more memories are coming back?
It did. It was a cathartic experience. It just came out of me. And I got a publisher, and I'm going, I've got, 130,000 words, and I've still got stuff that's coming out of me daily. And he goes, well, that's all good, but I need 98,000 words. So I had to cut a lot of it down and abbreviate some things and take some things out.
And the cover of the book, there's a story behind that. You were telling me it's got that Spider-Man, almost looks like a Spider-Man costume there.
Right.
That's actually Dennis's.
It's actually Dennis's jacket, spider jacket that Cindy made for him. And I was having trouble because they said you have to come up, or the publisher says now you have to come up with a book cover. And I go, oh my, I hadn't even thought about it. And I started going through the ream of photos that people had lent me to use for the book, and I couldn't find one that I liked. And I said, and I contacted Dennis, and I said, "You got anything that might work?" And he says, "Yeah, let me see what I can come up with." And it was like less than an hour, and he had the cover designed. He used his Cindy spider jacket that he wore as the background, then put a picture of me from the accident where we rolled over on the freeway.
That's the car accident. Okay, that's what I was thinking. We'll get to that. We're going to get to that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he put the title on it, and he sent it to me. And he said, "How about this?" And I said, "That's it." And so I have to thank him for doing the cover too.
It's perfect. And he wore that jacket while he was on stage performing.
Oh yeah, yeah. At the last time I believe was at Wembley Stadium. Yeah, boy, I can't remember the year. 2017, I think, where Alice had him on for a few songs, and we met up. He came over to our house for dinner when he was in town, and he wore the jacket so I could have my picture taken with the book and the jacket. So that was nice too.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, before we get to your time with Alice Cooper, let's start just a brief background. Where are you from and what led you to Arizona? And what are some of the things you wrestled a full-size bear?
Yeah, yeah.
When you were in your younger days.
Girl.
Right.
It was a stupid thing to do, but he literally mopped the floor with me in about under 5 minutes.
That was when you arrived in Arizona, I believe.
Yes.
Shortly after. Yeah.
My
Where are you
dad
originally
was-
from?
Well, my dad was in the military, so I'm originally from everywhere. I was born in California, and actually, I was born outside of Escondido, California. My mom went into labor at a duck blind because my dad was out hunting ducks at the time, and she says she was there to retrieve them. And she went into labor, and my dad hadn't gotten his limit to ducks yet. So he was wondering, could you hold off for a few more minutes until I get this? And she goes, "No, I need to go to the hospital right now." So went to the hospital, and I was born on November 8th, which kind of made my dad kind of upset because he wanted me born on November 10th, which is the anniversary of the Marine Corps. He wanted to have bragging rights that I was born on the Marine Corps anniversary because he was a officer in the Marines for about 21 years. And when he retired, he wanted to move to Phoenix because a lot of his Marine Corps buddies were there. And so we moved to Phoenix, and thus began the journey.
And you wrestled that full-size bear that you wrestled was for, I'm trying to remember, was it for like an auto dealership or no? Was that what it was? Yeah. And
yeah,
but like you say, is to impress a girl.
Right. I thought, that if I wrestled a bear and I won, because the prize was, if I could do it, if I could pin it in under a certain amount of time, I got $100. But if I could pin it within a shorter amount of time, I got a used car. So I thought, well, this will impress her. And I was 6'5", and I played a little football in high school and a little baseball. And so I thought, well, why not? And I was underage, but I signed the permit anyway, allowing me to go out there and get annihilated. And he had a muzzle on, and that was about it, and pads on his feet. And I thought, well, all I got to do is grab him, pull him down, pin him, and I've got a car and a girl who's going, "Oh, you're so cool." Yeah, none of that happened. He pinned me in about 30 seconds. No, make it a minute. And he just sat on me, and the owner of the bear gave him a bottle of Coke to drink. So he just leaned back against me and drank the Coke and got up and walked away. And
that's awesome.
And then I had to face the girl, and she says, "That was a really stupid thing to do, and you smell really bad." Because I had rolled over something that the bear had done probably earlier.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because you're the perfect guy for this job to go on the road with Alice Cooper. I think you were you had the perfect makeup to go and do these adventures. Glenn Buxton was the guy, right? Who the late great guitarist Glenn Buxton, who got you the job with Alice.
Right. And I don't know why, but we hit it off instantly because I was the son of a Marine officer, and I was taught to behave a certain way with yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, stand up when somebody comes to talk to you. And so we were the exact opposite. Glenn smoked and drank and swore and got a lot of joy out of life. And, I could stand up and address a person and say, it's nice to meet you. I'm so happy to be here. But we just clicked for some reason. Maybe it was because I had a car and I'd drive him everywhere. But we'd go in his bedroom and he would play his guitar for me and he would try to teach me how to play, but it just went way over my head. I wasn't ready. And he would play Chet Atkins and he was going, listen to this guitar. This is the most amazing guitar you'll ever hear. Chet Atkins is playing, oh man, I can't remember, Battle Hymn of the Republic and Dixie all at the same time. And he's going, this is the most amazing performance you'll ever see. And so I'm going, yeah, if you say so, Glenn, I believe you. And Glenn taught the rest of the band how to play their instruments. Some had Dennis played bass, but Glenn showed him how. John Tatum played guitar a little, but Glenn improved his playing. So he was basically the father of the Earwigs and the Spiders and the Nazz and Alice Cooper.
Yeah, Dennis told that story about when he was teaching him how to play bass. So Glenn's telling you, we got a band. We need somebody to take us out and take us out on the road and set up, and that's how it all came about.
Yeah, we were in college, and he said, and this is the strange thing about Glenn. He goes, "What kind of car do you have?" I'm going, Glenn, I've driven you about 100 places. And I said, it's a Fury station wagon, vintage 1960 Plymouth. And he went, oh, that's great. Would you be interested in hauling the band's equipment? I go, well, yeah, I guess and we'll even pay you. And I said, well, that's even better. And so he says, you got to pass the interview, Phil. And I go, well, what do they want? He goes, I don't know, but they may ask you some questions. I said, okay. So we went to Christown, which was the first enclosed mall ever built in Arizona. And there was Vince, Alice in the Future, Dennis, and I believe John Spear. John Spear was there, the original drummer. And they looked at me and said, do you want to haul our equipment? And I go, sure, I'm not doing anything. I'm just, I think I used the term wasting my way in college right now. And they go, okay, you're hired. And they go, can we walk out and see the van or see the vehicle? And I go, sure. So I took them outside and showed them the Fury, and they go, my God, that's long and big. I think you can get us all in there and the equipment. And then they had visions of, well, let's draw a spider with fangs on it. And I'm thinking, let's not draw a spider with fangs on it, because the vehicle belonged to my dad and myself.
Right.
Both bought it for me to go to school and him to go deer hunting in. And so
and they were called the Spiders at the time.
Yes.
Okay.
The Spiders. They had just switched over from the Nazz to the Spiders and were starting to play at the VIP club. And so I said, okay, not thinking that this was going to amount to much, because they were a local high school band, basically, even though some of them were in college. And so I said, sure. And I never asked them how much it paid or will I get paid or, what my duties are or anything. I just kind of made it up as I went along.
Little did you know, but soon
Little did I know.
you would start to realize like these guys are something special. I think in the book too, you said these guys were thin, man. They needed
Oh
they
yeah,
needed to eat a meal. They were really
yeah,
skinny.
they really were, and because I think they ran track. I wasn't familiar with that they'd done track at the time, but these guys were like sticks. I mean, a good breeze would knock them down.
Al known for his showmanship and theatrics. He's Vincent Furnier at the time, but even those early days, he did that stuff. Like you put a toilet on stage and threw toilet paper out into the crowd.
They
and
were
then
looking. They were looking for direction. And I'm,
tell me about the one where he's reading the Bible on stage.
right. Yeah, it was I don't think it was a Bible. I think it was a hymnal
Was it?
that they used at church where they sang songs and passages. And I'm going, oh, geez, now we're bringing God into this. And he had this voice that he, like a fire and brimstone preacher during a song. And then he would take the Bible and he would slam it down on a table, or the missal rather, and hymnal, and slam it down on a table, and which caused everybody in the crowd to jump like this. And it was just one of their things. The toilets, tires, they were looking for something.
Yeah. They loved it. Alice loved it. They loved it when they shocked people. That was something right away. You could tell.
One day Alice said, we want to do 10 years time ago by the Yardbirds. I said, great, have at it. Go do it. What you don't need my approval or anything. So he goes, no, listen to this middle part. And I go, okay, it's a bunch of traffic noise and car horns honking and stuff. I want to duplicate that on stage. So you do it for me. And I go, I'm not an expert in electronics. I mean, I said, I'll give it a shot. So I went to the junkyard and bought a car horn, steering wheel, and a horn, and tied it all together with a battery. And they just had to put a microphone down there. And by golly, it worked. He went around driving this car horn, hitting the horn, and it would be going off, and then the band would be going, yeah, right, making all the rest of the noise behind it. I think he used it twice.
That's great. That is great. How did the band sound musically?
Oh, they were tight. I mean,
yeah,
these guys, most of the local bands in town at that time, well, I won't say most. Well, I will say most. They did a set, and it was the same songs over and over and over again. They had hundreds of songs, and they would do a set, maybe three sets a night, and then do entirely different songs every time. I mean, it went from Paul Butterfield East West to A Psychotic Reaction by the Count Five to something by the Who to something by the Stones, a lot of stuff by the Yardbirds. Oh, funny story about the Yardbirds. Jack Curtis, who owned the VIP club, hired the Yardbirds to come and play at the VIP. And on the marquee, the Spiders got top billing over the Yardbirds. And we're talking Jeff Beck and
wow.
other people playing. And then when the Yardbirds came out and started playing, the crowd was going, hey, they're playing the Spiders songs. What's going on here? They hadn't a clue that the Spiders were doing Yardbird songs, and they thought the Yardbirds were doing Spider songs.
Yeah, so they were developing a following.
Oh yeah. Oh, they were number one. Well, I'm sure they'll get opinions from other people, but they were number one in Arizona. I mean, they were ruled the roost because they were inventive. They had huge repertoires that appealed to everybody. And they put on a show, be it with toilets or old fences or, I mean, they built this enormous wheel called the Electrolucent Mind Machine.
I was going to ask you about that. The Electrolucent Mind, also known as Big Joe.
Yep. And they all, didn't have anything much to do with it. They built this tower, put this huge round eight sheet, 8 foot sheet of plywood and decorated with colored paint and phosphorescent paint and luminescent paint. And they even painted their faces with luminescent paint. And it was my job to hold it down because it was unstable, because you have this 8 foot thing wobbling on a narrow stand. And so I grabbed that thing on for dear life around it when it played, because it was right beneath the drummer, and he was always looking over his shoulder. Is that thing going to come loose and cut my head off? And everybody was worried about that too. But it was a pretty impressive achievement.
So it was pretty quick that you started to realize these guys are serious about taking this all the way. They're more than just a local band.
I never knew if they were serious, because they always looked like they were having so much fun. And they were throwing, if you're going to take the band serious, here they are throwing rolls of toilet paper at the audience.
Right.
Going, well, okay, that's serious. That isn't serious. That's like having fun. Or it was
Okay.
just it was just a good time.
Were there any conversations that you'd be privy to that they're talking about, like, this is what we got to do to make it?
Yeah. Sure. And they said, we got a couple of records here, and we're the Spiders, but we may not do any better than the Arizona market. If we want to go someplace and be somebody, we got to go to California. And so they said, you want to go with us? I said, sure, I'll go for a weekend. What the heck? And so they went for a weekend, and by this time they had a business manager named Dick Christian, and he had a bunch of cards made up and a couple of tapes, and he went around and spread them out to all the clubs. And we stayed there for a weekend. The first night, some guy we met at a show said, "Oh yeah, you can come stay with us," or stay with him. And we did for one night until somebody ate his iguana's bananas from the refrigerator, so he threw us out the next day. But it was things like that, the unexpected. Oh, here's this guy who doesn't know us. Here's 8 people. 8 of us all crammed into his apartment, and he's on the phone talking to late night radio, saying, "Yeah, I met a group called the Spiders today." And the announcer would come back, "Well, yeah, you better get some spray and kill those bugs." He goes, "No, they're a band." So here they are getting publicity on a talk show, and they've only been there for 8 hours or so.
Wow.
So
you would go there and then come back to Arizona and then go back to LA, just kind of
back and forth for a few times until they decided we're going to do it for real. And so they had to change their name, because there was like 7 other groups called the Spiders out there. And so they came up with the name, according to Tootie Muller, who was a good friend of the band, and drove part of the band to Albuquerque when they played Albuquerque. And when they were coming home, Vince was thinking up names, and he was going, Jazz, Spaz, Naz. And he goes, Naz, that's a clever song, or never clever name. And plus it was used by the Yardbirds. That might have influenced him. But he says, the Naz. So he told the rest of the guys, how about the Naz? And they go, how about the Naz? Nobody's going to have that name. So they went to California as the Naz, only to learn about 3 months later there was already another group called the Naz, with Todd Rundgren, who had an album, and Hello, I'm Here or There or something. Hello, it's me. That's it.
So it's back to the drawing board.
Yeah, it was back to the drawing board. But along the way, as the Naz, they met the manager of the Cheetah Club, and she took a liking to them and almost pretty much made them their the Cheetah Club's house band. And so we had a place to stay. We stayed at her house for a while, and then we rented a place in Venice Beach, yeah, for a while. And then we got to go to the Chambers Brothers house because they had a big hit with Time.
Yeah.
And so they let us stay there until the neighbors told us that we better leave because they felt that our safety was in jeopardy. So it didn't take that to get me on on a newspaper looking for, where else to go, and then we went into Topanga Canyon.
Right.
After that.
That's when you changed it to Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the story about that? Because you were there when Vince, at the time, then Vince suggested it. What led him to that name?
Yeah. Well, this was in Phoenix. We had come back to Phoenix. We were living in Topanga, but we came back because, first of all, the drummer left, John Spear, the drummer. This was in November of '67, and that caused a big upheaval with the band because they were the Nazz without the drummer. Luckily, Neil Smith was available, so he came and joined the group, and they played one time at the Cheetah Club, I believe, with Neil. And then they left, and we went back to Phoenix so that Neil could learn the songs and get comfortable with playing with the band and things like that. And also there was a club that was going to be opened in the name of Alice Cooper by Jack Curtis. He was going to call it the Alice Cooper Club, and he did call it the Alice Cooper Club. So we went back with in mind to go see the club opening, and I think they played there too. So we're going back to Topanga again, and this was on April 12th. They had time to change of clothes and gather up all the foods from all the houses, and we took off on April 12th, and that's when the accident happened.
Yeah, that was 1968.
68, April 12th, 1968.
Yeah, I want to ask you
No,
about
I'm
that.
sorry, March.
Was it?
Yeah, March 12th, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
1968.
All right, but it was 68. But yeah,
Yeah.
I want to ask you about that. We'll get to that. But
Okay.
getting back to the so now they want to change to the Alice Cooper Club. That inspired Vincent.
Well, you wanted to know how they came about with it.
Right.
Yeah. Alice approached the band and said, "How about Alice Cooper?" And they go, "Well, okay, what about Alice Cooper? I don't think it was a big hit." I was there witnessing it all, but they're going, maybe another name might be. And I think Glenn came up with something called Husky Baby Sandwiches.
Yeah.
Which was funny, but that they didn't go for that. I came up with something called colonial aggressions because that was a psychological term, and I thought maybe that they might like that. And they go, no, it sounds too much like Paul Revere and the Raiders. And then they thought about Alice Cooper, and he goes, well, imagine this. The band's called Alice Cooper, and 5 guys walk out on stage. The crowd's going to go wonder, where's Alice Cooper? What's Alice Cooper? Did they have a fight? Did she break up from the group? And it said it has possibilities that you go out there with a wholesome name like Alice Cooper, and people would be interested, or people would be at least cause something in their brain to click and go, why is this band called Alice Cooper? There's no girl up there. And the more they thought about it, the more they liked it. And they go, this just might be it. And then Bonnie Phillips, this all came about at Dick Christian's house sister's place. And so she said, let me break out the Ouija board. And I go, okay, what's a Ouija board? And so she and somebody, I think it was Alice or something, I might have been, said, is Alice Cooper a good name? And you could almost see Alice grabbing the thing and moving it over to the yes side. Will you make hit records? I can see Alice Cooper again, putting it on the other side. And look, the Ouija board likes it. Yeah, right.
I'm not moving it. I swear. I'm
Yeah,
not
right. I don't know how this is happening. And I asked them, find this out for me. Will I ever get paid? And immediately Randa's no. Okay, it's real.
Alice Cooper initially was to be a witch. It was going to be like a character.
This was something that was just developed after it. The guys just got together and just said, we need a backstory. It just can't be Alice Cooper, the non-existent person. There has to be a backstory. So they came up with this witch thing that she was I don't know, you can pick your century. It's been all used, 15th, 16th, 17th century witch who was accused of witchcraft, who was condemned to death, and she was either drowned or hanged or burned. Or I've seen in various articles all these different stories about one she was hanged and then she was burned, or one she was drowned and then she was hanged or something. And that the main thing was that she swore a vengeance against all the descendants of all these people and would get even with them someday. And then when Joey and Shep came on board, they heard the backstory and they go, oh man, this could be good. They could develop this. So suddenly the whole band was reincarnated. I may get these things wrong, but Mike Bruce was the minstrel. Neil was the warrior king. Dennis was the poet. And that was about it. Oh, and Glenn was the Black Knight.
Okay.
I think that was how it went down. And so they worked on, Joey and Shep put out a publicity thing stating, this is a true story of Alice Cooper. And of course, some of the newspapers picked it up and said, yeah, there's a witch and a CPA and a lawyer and somebody else in there too, a warrior king and stuff like that.
Wow.
So it hit the papers and it didn't really last maybe 4 or 5 or 6 months. I mean, the band never said we were any of these things. It was just brought up by, they read articles in the newspaper and things like that about,
yeah,
hey, you guys are all been reincarnated now. Or, yeah, we were all reincarnated. But it was not that big a deal, but it did get out there and people did find it in newspapers and articles and stuff.
You mentioned Joey and Shep, and those are the managers.
Right.
Shep Gordon and Joey
Greenberg.
Yeah. Now, and then just eventually Vincent Furnier just kind of falls into or takes on that character and eventually changes his name legally to Alice Cooper.
Well, yeah, it almost had to be, because especially with the witch thing, well, who's the witch? Well, it's got to be Alice Cooper. And this guy looks like Alice Cooper. He's the lead singer. So it was like day one, it was ordained that Vince was going to be the Alice Cooper, because the others were the Warrior King and the whatever.
There was an car accident, catastrophic, that could have ended the band in 1968. So let's get to that. And by the way, we're going to get to the Frank Zappa part of the story. That's coming up too. So we'll get to that. But yeah, what happened with this accident in 1968?
Well, like I say, it was in April 6th, we went back to attend the opening of Alice Cooper, the club, which only lasted 3 months. But they stuck around, recorded, got Neil up to speed on the music. And we were supposed to return on the 11th. But by the time everybody got together, it was after midnight on the 12th. Excuse me, I was driving the van, and everybody and all the equipment poured in, and off we went, and leaving at after midnight on the 12th. And we got to the San Bernardino freeway, and rush hour traffic wasn't as busy as it is now, but it was still getting to be rush hour at 6:30, whenever the time was. And I was driving along, and suddenly there was the freeway opened up all the way for, it looked like miles, and there was nobody behind me. I was just in my lane doing absolutely nothing, going, man, this is great. I can take this all the way to Topanga and, no stress. And Dennis was just about ready to walk up and ask me if I needed a break. Which I would have said no, we're only 30 minutes away from where we were. Then alongside, and I don't know how or why this happened, a Ford beige or yellow station wagon with fake wood trim pulled up alongside of me, about the middle of their car with the front of my car, and came right over into my lane, causing me to jerk the wheel hard to the left or the right. I can't remember. Yeah, the left. And all the equipment and all the people in there and the van started rotating. And then I tried to straighten it up, and I hit an embankment, and it just went stop and just went rolling down the freeway. And the number of rolls, I don't know, I've heard 3 to 5 by the band members, but I went out through the front windshield, and I was still strapped to my seat.
Oh, wow.
Because thankfully, my parents, before we went over there, gave me a set of seat belts to install in that van. I did a crummy job installing them. I installed them to the seat, but it saved my life.
Right.
Because when the seat went out, the seat belts went with me and held me on the seat when I went out through the windshield. And when the police found me, I was, well, I don't know, 20 feet down the road, unconscious, but I didn't have a mark on me, and I was still strapped to the seat. And
Wow.
everybody else was, got hit by amplifiers and drums, and Dick Christian took a cymbal to the back of the head, which caused a big gash in his head and needed stitches. Neil told me the last time we had dinner that he was forced onto the ground with his head turned to the road, because they were literally, the roof was on top of the road, and it was screeching down the highway. And he said he was deaf in 1 year because of that noise just penetrated his head, and he couldn't get out from under the equipment or the bodies on top of him.
Wow. I mean, lucky to be alive.
Absolutely. I mean, Alice to this day says it's a miracle, and I've got no proof otherwise. And the other thing is, my mom, before we took off, gave me a St. Christopher's medal, and I put it in the visor. And unfortunately, the visor broke off during the fall, and never could find the medal again. But yeah, it was. If you've seen the pictures from the book, Tootie came over and took those pictures for the insurance company. It was, some of those pictures looked like there was a nightmare in there that went terribly wrong.
So you shot through the windshield?
Yep. Well, luckily the first, I'm assuming, I don't know when it happened, but the windshield blew out.
Okay.
And I went
Thankfully,
out.
Because otherwise your head would have gone through the glass.
Right.
Okay.
The windshield blew out. It took half the rear view mirror with it, so that may have helped me too. And I just did a flip. I guess I just did a flip and landed on the back of the seat and just scooted along. It was amazing, because they unbuckled me and told me to go stand over there, and the police did. And so I went and stood. I was completely out of it. I didn't know what was going on, because I'd just been in a car accident.
No broken bones?
No, no, nothing. I didn't, I, I was stiff and sore and achy for weeks, but I don't think I had a cut on me because I was wearing a sweater and Levi's and shoes.
Yeah.
So,
None of the guys had broken bones? No.
no, just bruises and contusions.
How soon after did you get back on to the stage? I mean, they went right back at it, or were they in the hospital for a bit, or what was the
No,
recovery time?
we all got an ambulance ride to the hospital, and everybody saw us and gave us a clean bill of health. I don't know how we got home. I don't know who picked us up, who got us home. I just know that in some time later, maybe a couple of days, when everybody was functioning properly in their heads, they all had a band meeting, and they said all our equipment is gone. Neil's drums are smashed. Dennis's bass was broken into. And what do? We give up and break up, or go home and try to reorganize, or do we stick this out here and hope for the best? There was going to be some insurance money coming, but they were going to take their sweet time in getting it to us. And to a man, they said, let's stay and stick this thing out, because I think it was Alice who said, we don't know how to do anything else. And that was prophetic at the time. And Alice and I got jobs at a button factory up the hill a ways, with a great big view of Malibu. And we made buttons to earn money, and other people, helped out. And Tootie came over, and, with food and good vibes and stuff like that. And stayed around and took us places, because we didn't have a car or a vehicle at all at the time. And I needed to take pictures to show the insurance company and things like that. And she was right there helping out.
What a story. And you were going to work at the button factory to come up with money to get new instruments too, right?
Yeah. The money we made, I think we got our first check, it was $17. So it was just something that basically put in our pocket. The money did come out, but it came out not in one big chunk. It came out in, I believe, like four. So their equipment wasn't too badly damaged. The amplifiers, the drums were, smashed beyond all smithereens. And who really helped out is Cindy Smith. She gave up her job or her career in fashion design. She was ready to head out to Europe to become a fashion designer, because she got a scholarship. And she dropped everything and came to Topanga to take care of us and to get a job and help pay for stuff while we were there. And it was an amazing sacrifice to make.
The Booked on Rock podcast is part of the Boneless Podcasting Network. If you're a fan of classic rock and classic film like I am, go to boneless.lovable.app to find over 20 great shows there. That's boneless.lovable.app, or just go to bookedonrock.com, click on the logo. It'll take you right to the Boneless Podcasting Network. It is what you want it to be. Listen with confidence. Mike Allen, he's the author of Living and Touring with Alice Cooper and Other Stories. Frank Zappa signed the original Alice Cooper band to his label, Straight Records, in the late 60s. And you say Frank was nothing like what he appeared to be. He looked like your typical hippie freak.
He did.
Just wanted to get stoned. What was your impression of him?
Yeah, that was exactly it. I'm going, this guy? I mean, sure, you ran the Mothers and Inventions, but those were what you would call freaks in the day of the 60s. And, they went to other record companies trying to get a contract, and they were all turned down. One was very promising, except they had a sort of a hidden agenda, and that was to replace Alice with the lead singer of the Oh, they did Talk Talk. Time Machine, Mind Machines, something, Music Machine,
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
And they wanted the band that backed up the lead singer, whose name I cannot think of, from the Music Machine, left the group. And so this guy wanted to hire the Alice Cooper band to be their backup, to be the backup group that played with the lead singer of Music Machine. And and the band said, no, we're not doing that at all. So it all came about, strangely enough, is that Miss Christine, who was one of the GTOs, was living with the Zappas at the time, and talked up Alice to Frank Zappa. And she said, Zappa wants to see you. And they said, well, we're playing at the Cheetah Club all the time. So have him come down there and come and see a live performance. And rumor got back that Frank was there, but he left before the group ever came out. And so Miss Christine said, well, Frank can see you at 7 o'clock. And Alice took that to mean 7 o'clock in the morning. And I think I was the only one that was going, what self-respecting band group gets up at 7 o'clock in the
Right.
morning?
They're usually going to sleep at 7 o'clock in the
Yeah,
morning.
if you were Glenn Buxton, that's what you did.
Right.
But it didn't make any sense to me, but they were so enthusiastic. Oh, Frank Zappa's going to see us at 7 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, I said, okay, yeah. So we're driving at the freeway at 6:30 or whatever it was to Topanga, sort of Laurel Canyon, to the old Tom Mix estate where Frank lived with his wife, Gail, and Moon Unit. And so we pull up there, and it's like storming the beach at Normandy. Everybody grabs a piece of equipment, runs up the stairs, knocks on the door, and Gail just happened to be up. And she opens the door and says, hello. And the band just rushed right in and set right up in an alcove at the bottom of the stairs. And Gail saying, Miss Christine, take Moon Unit out of here because these guys are going to play. And so she does. And Miss Christine's giving the band the old stink eye, going, what are you doing here? And they're paying no attention to her. They're setting up, and they start playing. And in about 5 minutes, Frank opens the door and he sticks out his hand. He goes like making an up and down gesture, saying, stop, for the love of God, stop. And he comes out and he says, who are you guys? And they're going, we're Alice Cooper. You're supposed to see us today at 7 a.m. And he goes, that's 7 a.m. That's 7 p.m. tonight. And he goes, all right, let me have some coffee and I'll come out and I'll listen to you. And he comes out and has his coffee and he sits on the stairs up on top. He goes, play a song. And they play something. I can't remember which one it was, but they play it. And he goes, okay, I like you guys. I'm going to talk to you, but it's going to be in the afternoon. I'm going to have Miss Christine call you and tell you when I want to talk to you in the afternoon. Are we all clear on the afternoon? They go, yes, Frank, we're all clear on the afternoon. So they go home back to Topanga and they wait around, and about 3 or 4 days, Miss Christine calls and says, Frank wants to see you. And write this down. Frank wants to see you at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Repeat that to me. And Alice goes, or I think it might have been, I'll say Alice. He probably picked up the phone and said, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then they met, and it all became history at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
The rest is history. Yeah, so much is written about the late 60s, in the late 60s in LA too. Tell me about smoking a banana peel. This led to the term mellow yellow.
Yeah. It, the group was into marijuana. Some of them were, some of them weren't. And they heard that bananas were the next big thing. And I'm going, oh, geez, I'm going, God, I'm thinking to myself, this isn't going to work out well for you. There's nothing here. Bananas, So I said, they're going to try. And so in California, after this broke, you couldn't get a banana for love or money. So they went back to Phoenix and then they bought some bananas and they scraped the pith or whatever, the white stuff off the banana peel. And they put it on a tray and they put it in an oven and they cooked it. And then they rolled it up and they started smoking it. And they go, is anything happening? No, I don't feel anything. Anything happening? No, nothing. Somebody said, yeah, I'm feeling something. Really? Oh, yeah, me too. Yeah, I must. My God, guys, this is a placebo effect. Read it. Look, I studied this in science. Okay. And they tried it for a couple of days, but got 20 pounds of bananas that we all had to eat. But, it was something they tried and it failed.
Yeah, is that where the song Donovan Mellow Yellow? Is that where he's got?
I do not know. I guess you'll have to ask Slip because he knows. I guess that's right,
Right.
Slip. It possibly could be. It came out at the same time. They call it Mellow Yellow.
Hey guys, we'll get back to the show, but first I want to tell you about an exclusive deal for Booked on Rock listeners. Get 15% off any purchase at oldglory.com. Over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture. Merchandise featuring legendary music artists like Bob Marley, The Beatles, Grateful Dead, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, and many, many more. Go to oldglory.com. Make sure to use the promo code BookedOnRock. Also find a link in this episode's show notes, or just go to bookedonrock.com and click on My Deals. All right, let's talk about the time the band experimented with the occult. This is when you were living at Topanga Canyon, and there was a seance with Jim Morrison, and he gets freaked out.
Yeah. First of all, the occult is a word that they use on it, thinking that we were all Satanists or something. It wasn't. It was basically, we invited a bunch of guys, Jim Morrison, Robbie Krieger, Paul Rothschild.
Rothschild was their manager, wasn't he?
He owned Elektra Records.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. You're right.
And David Crosby, and I believe the guy for Love, Arthur
Lee.
Yeah, I believe he was there also. And we're going, this was the lean years where food was a precious commodity that we didn't have very often. And we're going, how are we going to feed these guys? We got half a bag of potato chips between us. And Norma, who was a friend of the band, was there and said, well, why don't I hold a seance? And the band's going, a seance? What is a seance? And she's going, well, it's where I summon up spirits and they talk and everybody's looking at one another going, a seance? We're going to do these guys weren't into the occult at all. They didn't even know, we didn't even know our zodiac signs. But to tell you how lame we were, or how cool we were. But she said, I'll do it all. And she said, okay, we're going to have a seance. And they notified everybody, and instead of food, we're going to have a seance. And everybody said, okay, great, we'll do that. And so Norma came and finished out the basement with, I don't know, dead shrubbery and black candles and some sort of bowl that looked like blood, but it was probably syrup or something. And set that in the middle of not a pentagram. I think it was a circle. And she was dressed as like a monk with a hood and stuff. And they came down and they all gathered around for the seance. And there was limited room down there, so there wasn't, all the band members didn't go down there. I think Alice may have gone down there, or Mike Bruce, maybe Neil went down there and joined in on the seance. And one thing I need to bring up right now before we go any further, in our closet, we were paranoid from the police because we had gotten stopped more times than I've got toes and fingers and hands and memories. And so we were paranoid of the police. So they said, let's build an escape hatch. And once again, I'm going, you want to build an escape hatch? Yes, it'll take us down in the basement and we'll escape through the outer door. I said, that's right next to the front door. They go, anyway, I think they liked me because I was the sensible one. And anyway, they cut a hole in the closet and built this trapdoor and put the wood back and framed it so that people could walk in there without tripping over themselves and falling. So the night of the seance, we removed the trapdoor because myself and Charlie wanted to watch Norma do her stuff. And nobody thought she was going to produce any spirits. They just thought, well, maybe a good time would be had here in her trying. And she was doing great. I mean, she was wailing and making eye contact, mostly with Morrison, and saying, is there a spirit in the room who wants to talk to us? I feel your presence, and I know you want to say something. Spirit, speak. At just about that very moment in time, Glenn Buxton decided to walk in through the closet where the hatch was removed and fell directly onto the middle of the circle where the seance was going. And I thought for a moment they had brought a lot of women down there because all of a sudden you heard this screaming like little girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people are running around in the dark, knocking over the candles and trying to get outside and stuff. And because Glenn, when provoked, can be a harbinger of bad news, and he was swearing like nobody's business. You know, he wasn't hurt, but I mean, anybody that went through that would have been screaming and yelling and cursing too. So people were going out and wondering if they'd need to bring an extra change of underwear. But that was a seance. It broke up quickly after that.
Morrison got pretty spooked.
Oh, yeah. I think Glenn tells the story that he landed on Morrison,
Right.
or in front of him or on his legs or something like that. Yeah. And the lights went out, and, you know, because she was saying, I need a sign, show me a sign. And then Glenn just drops out of the ceiling right into the middle of it.
Wow. Yeah.
It was something to behold. And Charlie and I are looking at each other going, what the heck just happened? You know, maybe Glenn was summoned, you know.
Right.
But I don't know. But he just walked right in there because Glenn likes to borrow clothes and never return them. But that's one of his idiosyncrasy. If he wants something and he doesn't see it in his wardrobe, he'll go to somebody else's wardrobe and get it. We think that's what happened. Is he went in to get some clothes because there was 4 of us living in this one room where the closet with the hole where the trap door was put. So I thoroughly believe, not to ruin a good story, that he was summoned by the devil, but he was in there to get some clothes for tomorrow.
Still incredible timing.
Yes, incredible.
Yeah,
timing,
yeah.
indeed.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out the Booked on Rock podcast. If you've just found the podcast, welcome. If you've been listening, thank you so much for your support. And make sure you tell a friend, a family member, share on social media, and let people know about Booked on Rock. And if you do like the podcast, make sure you subscribe, give a 5-star review wherever you listen to the Booked on Rock podcast. We're on Amazon, Apple, iHeart, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, and on YouTube Music. You can check out the full episodes on video, along with video highlights from episodes on the Booked on Rock YouTube channel. Find it at Booked on Rock. Thanks again for listening. Now back to the show. All right, so I got to ask you about the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival, September 1969. This is part of Alice Cooper history. The Doors were there, Bo Diddley, Chuck Berry, Chicago, John Lennon was there too. The band knows that if they do well here, more bookings are going to be coming in large venues. So this is a big deal. Now, in the book, you write, quote, "We prepared for the show by packing several feather pillows and CO2 fire extinguishers. A chicken would be arriving later. Alice, however, wanted something more, something special, but he didn't know what." Okay, so there are myths out there regarding what happened, what role Alice played. Take us through that night and tell us what really went down.
Okay, do you want me to tell you first what we went out and found first, or go right to
Sure.
the chicken?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Alice was looking for something spectacular because he says this is our make or break moment. There's going to be tons of millions of people there, and we want to do the best show we could. So I said, well, we're downtown Toronto. Let's walk around and see if there's anything that you could find. And so Alice and I went walking around Toronto, and we finally ended up in a Toronto Army Navy surplus store. And we're looking at Canadian flags. I'm going, this shows a little patriotism. You start waving a Canadian flag at the end, people get excited and they start cheering. And he goes, well, maybe. And then he was looking at uniforms. He could dress up as a Canadian soldier. And then he saw a sword, and I go, no more swords. I already been stabbed, and he already uses a sword enough. And so then he laid eyes on this pistol in a glass case, and he asked the store owner, "What is that?" And he says it's a Briggs British UK flare pistol. And he's going, "What can I do with that?" And it just all clicked together. We get the flare pistol, we shoot off a flare at the end of the show. It lights up the sky like fireworks. It comes slowly down in a parachute. People will be talking about this for years. And they did. And and that's what we got. And he said, and I've been raised around guns all my life, coming from a military family, but I never shot a flare pistol. I said, Alice, you need to test this thing out before you shoot it. And so we went up to our hotel room. We removed the screen from the glass. We were on like the 4th or 5th level. And they said, okay, Allison, I said, here's what you do. You climb out on your back outside the window and fire off the flare gun. And so you can get the feel of it, the kick of it, and all that. And he goes, I'm not doing that. And he goes, I'd be nuts to climb out of this window on the ledge or, on my back out there. He says, Mike, you do it. And for a split second, I thought hopefully he was talking to Mike Bruce, but he wasn't. He was talking to me. And it made a little sense because I was 6'5". I could scoot out on my window and not fall through the window. So I put a window on there and I said, everybody grab a hold of me at the proper times. And I scooted out past my back. We were about 5 stories high with nothing below me but concrete. And they handed me the flare pistol, and I judged that there was a park right next door. And if I held the gun at a certain angle, it would clear the ledge that overhang the roof. And so I fired it off. It went straight up in the air, and it lit up the sky like the sun had just come out. And everybody is going, oh my God, this is going to be absolutely amazing. Meanwhile, I'm yelling, pull me in, because I'm sitting out there in the middle of a lit sky with a gun in my hand and 5 or 6 stories up. So they yanked me in, and everybody's high-fiving one another, if they did that back then, going, this will be the coup de grace, or the finish that we've been looking for. Okay, now on to the chicken story. A lot has been made about the chicken being torn apart and torn to pieces and shredded, and made the newspapers around the world that Alice did all sorts of things. Like, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. He bit the head off. If he drank the blood from it, he threw it out, and the crowd tore it to pieces. Well, none of that happened. I'm sorry, it makes a great story, but it didn't happen. I mean, one, Canadians are too nice, and two, next time you go to a grocery store, buy a whole chicken and try and rip it apart at the store. Well, maybe you should buy it first, but
Right.
take it home and make a concerted effort to try and rip this dead chicken apart. It didn't happen. It all led up to 15 minutes of hectic, chaotic feathers, CO2 tanks blowing the feathers out in the audience. Oh, there was one other thing I should mention. The hospital was allowed to set a bunch of kids in wheelchairs right down below the stage, and there was nurses there to take care of the children. There's probably maybe 10 children in wheelchairs, and the nurses, when they lit off the feathers, all the feathers blew off and covered the kids and the nurses with chicken feathers.
Oh my God.
And they were just loving it. I mean, the nurses were just laughing, and the kids were just, they had the best time, which earlier they had cause for alarm because Neil Smith climbed up the speaker cabinets, leading straight up, and began to sway back and forth where the children and the nurses were. So the nurses made a beeline for the kids and dragged them in their wheelchairs all out of the way. And then Neil climbed back down. And then the end was all these chicken feathers and everything just strewn all over all these kids and nurses and blown out into the audience. And then the coup de grace after that was coming out with a flare pistol. I told Alice how to use it. For God's sakes, please don't shoot it under the canopy. Make sure you're out of the canopy's range. Aim it, fire it, and see what happens. And he did perfectly. He went beyond the canopy, lifted the gun up, fired it, and it went straight up in the air. I mean, we're talking 300, maybe 400 feet. It just went up in the air, and just blew into this huge orange glow. And then it proceeded straight down like a rocket. The parachute failed to open and got burned up in its rapid descent. And the crowd, from going, oh, woo, yay, was going, oh my God. And they formed this giant circle, and the thing came straight down, hit, ignited into a little flame, and some guy with boots came out and stomped it out. And then there was this moment of silence or relief, and then the crowd went nuts. And the guy came out and went, Alice Cooper, everybody, Alice Cooper. And the microphone wasn't really working properly because during the song, they destroyed everything on stage. They threw a watermelon out. They kicked a football. They did everything they could to build up excitement. And the microphone was shorting out because right after Alice Cooper, everybody, Alice Cooper, Mike showed it out and he went, what the hell was that? And he walked off stage. And it was a great, memorable evening. Yeah.
And wasn't it? It was an old woman that threw the chicken up on the stage.
The chicken was gotten ahead of time. I know it wasn't imported from America because poultry police at the border would have noticed that chicken and confiscated it right away. So somebody went out and got it and brought it on stage. It wasn't me, but it was provided for by them.
And then the feathers from the pillows, people were thinking that Alice was
ripping the chicken apart, and that the feathers were part of it. There was a story that I saw on YouTube maybe a couple of years ago, and it was a guy who was there to witness it all. And his story, he came out, sat in a chair, and he was all dressed in white, and he was telling the story about the chicken, how Alice threw it, but it didn't go any further than the kids in the wheelchairs, and the kids in the wheelchairs and the nurses tore it to pieces. And I'm going, no. Well, a nurse isn't going to tear a chicken apart, or even a Canadian nurse wouldn't tear a chicken apart. Those kids wouldn't do it. So I don't know where he came up with that story, but it wasn't correct.
Yeah. It's amazing all the stories though. Like I said, like I was telling you, I think I read somewhere there was just some old, like the chicken. I think Alice threw the chicken out into the front row, and then some older woman threw it back up on the stage. Or
no, I watched it go. Both me and Dennis saw the same thing, but we saw different things. We saw that Alice threw out the chicken, and he did actually a pretty good thing of it. He must have got it out there 30 feet, and it landed. And Dennis said I said it landed in front of some sort of tower, and Dennis said it landed in some sort of camera. So we both, Penny Baker was out there filming the whole thing. So it was probably one of his camera guys out there, and the chicken landed near that, and either somebody who was working in the crew or a fan. What I saw was the chicken was dazed and confused, picked the chicken up and held it and sort of cradled it in his arms. That was the last I saw of the chicken. It made for a great story that Frank said, deny nothing.
I was just about to say, deny nothing. He said, and Shep and Joe were basically saying they're loving it. I mean, like, just, hey, let them say whatever they got to say, because we're getting free publicity.
Truthfully, I thought the flare gun was going to be the biggest deal. People were going to go nuts over Alice Cooper nearly burns down Varsity Stadium, but it didn't happen. But the chicken thing,
I don't think something like that could happen today, because everybody's got their phones out and they could film everything, and everything would have been answered pretty quickly as to what happened. But because you're not 100% certain, the rumors start to swirl, and all of these urban legends start to develop. But
absolutely,
that's what I miss about those days, the good old days.
Yeah, because I had to drive to Toledo the next day, because they were doing a concert in Ohio, and I was listening to the radio as I was getting the gear ready and stored and everything properly, so it wouldn't all fall over and break. And the radio was on, and people were calling into these call shows like, "This is discussing Alice Cooper is in murder. He ate this chicken on stage and threw it off there. I'm keeping my kids out of school till I know that they're safely out of town." It was just this build up, and by the time it hit Europe, I'm sure that, the story must have been huge.
Was that when you started to realize, this band's going to be huge?
I don't think of these guys as rock stars. I mean, because they were my friends, and they were a bunch of goofy kids. I mean, really. And I still looked at them like that. I didn't look at them as rock stars. I guess I should have, but I didn't. So I didn't have a concept of they were going to be famous, because I was just trying to get them on stage and the equipment functioning for them to play. Because I guess, well, just before they were supposed to go on, Glenn's amplifier disappeared and was taken down into the stadium. And I'm going, oh crap, I need this like a hole in the head. I don't need that amplifier stolen. So I followed these guys down into the bowels of the stadium, And I said, I don't know if I need to get help or what, but I'm going to get that amp back no matter what. And so I could hear people talking, and I go, oh my God, there's got to be 6 or 7 of them there. I said, I can't, they're going on stage soon. I got to get the amp. If I got to fight 6 or 7 guys, that's going to be it. So I turned around the corner and I pointed and I said, I want that. And then I stopped because John Lennon was plugging into the amplifier. And I'm going, holy, and I go, Mr. Lennon, sir, I really need that amp on stage because they're going on, Alice Cooper's going on next, and they need Glenn needs his amplifier. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry, mate. I had no idea. I've always wanted to play one of these acoustic amplifiers, and this was an opportunity. I didn't know you were going on next or anything. I said, after the show, if you want to play it, I will bring it down personally and let. He goes, no, I've caused enough trouble. He was really a nice guy. Yeah.
You're telling me early on, people were shocked that they didn't realize you had all these stories. If I had a verbal exchange with John Lennon, I'd be sharing that story for the rest of my life.
Well,
I'd be telling everybody I knew.
But everybody would think, no, you didn't.
Yeah, he's lying.
Yeah. And then to mention, oh, yeah, by the way, Eric Clapton was there too, ready to plug into the amplifier. Yeah. So it just sounds like a big story, but it actually happened that I was stupid enough to think I was going to fight 6 guys to get that amplifier back. But it turned out for the best.
Find the Booked on Rock website at bookedonrock.com. There you can find all the back episodes of the show, the latest episode in video and audio, links to all of the platforms where you can listen to the podcast, plus all the social media platforms. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. Also, check out the Booked on Rock blog, find your local independent bookstore, find out all the latest hot rock book releases, and before you go, check out the Booked on Rock online store. Pick up some Booked on Rock merch. It's all at bookedonrock.com. When did you decide it was time to step down and why?
Well, I got into another accident. Every van the band ever opened or ever had, I destroyed. And, I took this one wasn't as bad, but it was bad enough that, the back wasn't feeling right anymore. And I had it wasn't my fault again. In fact, their insurance company settled in a claim for me because Joey and Shep got a lawyer going, this guy deserves to be in jail because he was on the 5 heading south in California, and the speed limit was 65, and there was this guy on the side of the road, and he went out into traffic going 5 miles an hour, and there was a highway patrolman right next to me, and it was a demolition derby. I drove off the freeway through the dirt median. Cars were doing 360s, 180. The cop did a 180 and was headed backwards. And I went through a big, huge freeway sign that came crashing down on the van. One of the poles of the sign went right through the middle of the van, right through the front windshield between me and Charlie. And I passed out. Once again, I guess I do stupid, or my body shuts down in the face of danger. But, next thing I know,
going to shock.
Yeah, people were banging on the window going, we're trying to get you out. We're trying to get you out. And they finally pry the door open, and I'm out and I'm wobbly. And people are going up thanking me for, ditching the freeway like I did, because, it had disaster spilled all over it. And even the policeman came up and said, thank you for, pulling off the freeway and going through that sign, because I would have been the next to hit you. And it just went on and on. And they changed. Oh, I also got a flat tire driving over pieces of the sign. And there was about 6 to 8 cars involved in it. So one of the people put the tire on for me, and we got on our way, and we went home, and stopped at an overlook and took a breather for about a half hour and got in the car and was promptly about 40 miles from LA, and I got pulled over by the highway patrol and given a ticket for having a defective windshield. And that was the icing on the cake on that. But my time was getting, I'd been doing it for close to 5 years. And I came to realize I was 23 years old and I didn't know how to do anything except lift equipment and set equipment down. And then when we came back, the final straw, not the final straw, but thing that kind of summed it up for me was we were staying before we were staying in a very nice house up in the Hollywood Hills. Didn't have any furniture, but it was a very elegant mini mansion. And life was good there. And now when we came home, we were directed to go to this apartment building on, oh man, Ibis Street, 2001 Ibis Street, which was situated directly underneath the freeway. Half the apartments were under the freeway and the other half were outside of the freeway. And so we went up to we were separated by, instead of being in one house, we were separated by 2 apartments or maybe 3 apartments at the time. And between the noise from the freeway and if you open the window, the carbon monoxide would come floating down. I just said, I know these guys are going to make it, but I just can't do it with me because I'm approaching an age where I should have a career picked out. And so I decided, and the other thing, another major thing was my dad had given me a golf credit card to use, and I used that for my entire 4 years I was there, and Joey and Shep would pay the bill. But it turns out things were kind of lean and that they hadn't paid the bill, and the bill was right around $2,000. So I felt obligated that when I heard that, I said, I got to go home. I got to pay this off because this isn't my dad's responsibility to pay this for this credit card. So I should. And I got $1,500 from the accident. So I said, I'm going to go home and pay off that bill and then get a job and try to do something. And so with heavy heart, I left and went back and moved in with my parents, which was sort of a downgrade because I was an adult now. But 2 weeks later, Joe Greenberg called me on the phone and said, we've taken care of that bill. And I said, God, I'm so thankful. Thank you very much for doing that. That is a big weight off me because I'm living at home and, I was going to use this money to pay off their loan, but now you've done it so great. And he goes, do you want to come back? And I really thought about it. I said, boy, I really want to, but I just can't. I'm back in Phoenix. I've decided to get a job. I was delivering pizzas at the time, but I've decided to go to school and earn some sort of degree in something. And I thanked him very much, and that was it. And as soon as I started school, I said, boy, you got to leave the band behind you. And I did.
And you went on to do what after the Alice Cooper experience?
Ellen, my future wife was going to nursing school. I said, well, maybe I should try this medicine thing. I had no knowledge of it. But I went to a hospital and said, I'd like to be an orderly. And they said, okay, have you ever done this, this, and this? And I go, oh, and I go, no, not for a long time. I was trying to con myself into getting a job into something that I do nothing about. And they said, well, we can't use you, but, and this, I swear to God, this was, they said, go to the county hospital. They'll take anybody. And so I went to the county hospital, and sure enough, they took me. But they put me through class to become I guess it was called nursing assistant. And so I went to class for about a month to learn how to be a nursing assistant. And they had a request for me to go to the ER. I'm going, ER, that you got to know your stuff to go there, right? Why do they want me? And basically it was because I was 6'5", and lifting weights kind of makes you kind of bulky. And they wanted me to basically wrestle patients who were uncooperative and things like that. So I went to the ER and I wrestled patients for a while. And
You went from wrestling a bear to wrestling patients.
yeah, because I had to wrestle a few people who got on stage a couple of times.
Right.
Well, I guess I was used to it. Then I saw these people out on the side of the building eating ice cream, and I said, "What are these guys doing?" And I was told they're respiratory therapists. And I go, "I don't know what that is, but I'm going to sign up for it tomorrow." So I signed up for respiratory therapy school, and they took me as a student respiratory therapist. So I got a raise in pay, and I became a respiratory therapist. Then I decided I wanted to become a nurse. And so I went to nursing school, and then I became a nurse. Then I decided I wanted to do anesthesia, so I became a nurse anesthetist. And I went to school for 2 years and studied anesthesia. So I did anesthesia for about 20 years and then retired.
Wow, good for you. And you kept in touch with the guys every now and then.
Well,
You'd
now and then.
Yeah.
It really hit back to when the movie came out, back to the Welcome to the AstroTurf, Alice Cooper. Because I met the band all again, and it was like nothing, no time had passed. There were the jokes. There was Michael Bruce going, "There's a guy who tried to kill me,"
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and kept in touch. And then when I wrote the book, it just snowballed into I met Neil. I connected with Neil and Dennis and Mike Bruce, met Alice a few times, went out to dinner with Alice, and it just, all came back that, I enjoy these memories now.
Yeah.
And I was glad that I wrote about them.
That's cool.
And that was basically it. And I was, I embraced my past is basically what it is, because I left it behind because I felt I was behind because I didn't have any type of career moved out, carved out for me yet.
Yeah. What a story. You have to be glad you put it all in the book. It's in there now and it's part of history.
Yeah, who reads it? It's part of history.
Part of rock history.
I'm glad because it all started with somebody saying, at a funeral, get together, you need to write a book.
I'm glad you did. Alice Cooper fans are glad you did. And people can get the book, wherever books are sold, Living and Touring with Alice Cooper and Other Stories. And you can find it at your nearest bookstore, Amazon. I got the Kindle version. So it's pretty much everywhere.
One of the things, when we had dinner with Dennis and Cindy, Cindy was writing a book also.
Yes.
And she opened up and told Ellen and I stories about it. And it was like one of these cartoons where the guy's jaw drops down and hits the table. I'm going, my God, woman, this is fantastic. The people that she met and the things that she did.
Right. She kept a diary.
Yeah. And it just wasn't with Alice Cooper. We're talking big names and big stories that I can't tell anybody about because I don't think she wants me to. So, but these stories were just absolutely amazing.
We're hoping that ends up coming out. Dennis has said that she's working on a book. So that's.
But yeah, Cindy does it. Cindy is doing it her way, and that's the way you should do it. And it's methodical and taking your time and getting it just perfect. For me, I was just yelling into a dicta machine that wrote words when I talked into it. And I'd go back and go, well, that's terrible, but she's doing it the right way for her.
Yeah. Looking forward to that book.
The stories she told me were fantastic.
Yeah. That's a teaser. Yeah. We're hoping that comes soon. We'll see. But Dennis did say, yeah, his wife is working on that. Cindy was with the band from day one, right?
No. She knew the band, and actually she got into fights with Dennis while she was not working with the band, but she was sticking up for her brother. And Dennis made a sarcastic remark about Neil playing with this other band. And she says, that's my brother, and he's the best damn brother and the best drummer here. And Dennis backed off for a few years. And then and another thing about Cindy is we have a past that I didn't know about. When I was in high school and college, no, just in high school, I had a job working weekends as a wrangler at a horseback riding facility. And because I raised around horses and farms and things like that. And so what happened here? There we go. And so I worked as a wrangler and taking people out on rides in this horseback thing. And 2 years later, Cindy worked at the same riding stable doing the exact same thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm going, small world.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting how life goes on sometimes.
Yeah. Very much. Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's amazing. You never know where things will take you. You never know what adventures lie ahead. And you had some great ones to tell, and they're in the book. So I thank you so much, Mike, for sharing some time with us fans and telling these stories. They're great. And there's more to be told in that book. So people should go out and get it. Living and Touring with Alice Cooper and Other Stories. Mike, thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure doing this.
That's it. It's in the books.